No one saw this coming as Team Sweden has shocked the hockey world with their selections for the Four Nations Faceoff this coming February. And one player in particular was left off the team and snubbed. And we're going to break it all down in this episode of Hattrick HQ. But before we do, a quick reminder to hit that subscribe button. About 70% of you who watch these videos are not actually subscribed to the channel. So if you want to do yourself a favor, it's free. Hit that subscribe button and you get to stay up to date with everything that's happening in the NHL. But Casey, some interesting news dropped today. It's official. We have the rosters for two teams in the Four Nations Faceoff, but more notably in this video, Team Sweden, and some interesting ones. I want to get a reaction right away to obviously what dropped immediately, which is who made the team. We're going to get to a couple players who were maybe snubbed and left off the team in a minute, but what's your reaction to a couple of the players who made this team? Most notably, I think we all knew, William Nylander was going to make this team, obviously, but there's some interesting names here that I want to get into as well. But what's your initial thoughts on who made the team?
Yeah, I think Team Sweden got a little sneaky team here. I think they're not going to be a team to be messing around with here in this tournament. I mean, obviously you got the names like William Nylander, Hedman. You got some surprise picks in there like Victor Arvidsson and guys like that. But I think that Sweden has really been on the up and up here. They got a mix of veterans, a mix of young guys in this team. And I think I wouldn't want to be on the other side of the ice of this team. I think they're going to be a phenomenal team to go up against. And they could even maybe take this thing.
Yeah, I mean, they have a sneaky team. That's a good word for it. I mean, they put together a pretty good roster here. And besides the forward group, which is pretty interesting to me, we'll get into that in a minute. But the defense, I mean, the weakest link there to me is Eric Carlson. That's saying something considering the season he just had just a couple seasons ago. And if you look at the defense, I mean, it is stacked. Dahlin, Anderson's having a great season. Brodin is having a fantastic season for the Minnesota Wild. We know what Forsling can do. Matthias Ekholm is considered right now by some to be the greatest defensive defenseman in the league. So very interesting lineup here. The goaltending too, I feel like there was no surprises with that. It's very deep. We knew that was going to be the case. But they are sneaky good, especially the goaltending and the defense in this tournament, because another team like, let's say, Canada may not have the goaltending to go up against something like this. But the forward group is very interesting to me. We have Nyquist, who made the team on a struggling Nashville Predators team. Speaking of struggling, Mika Zibanejad has been struggling. The New York Rangers have been struggling. He ends up making the team. There's a couple names like obviously William Nylander's there, but one player I wanted to get into specifically is a guy like Victor Arvidsson made the team over a guy like William Eklund. And I know you're a big fan of this player out of the San Jose Sharks, and he was left off the team. So what's your reaction to that? Because I feel like he's having a far better season so far, at least, than a lot of the guys who were named to this team.
Completely shocked when I seen this today, and I was like, "Are you serious? Eklund isn't there? Fabian Zetterlund isn't there? These are two guys who are lighting the NHL on fire right now with the San Jose Sharks, and maybe that's where they're getting looked over because maybe the Sharks team hasn't gotten the coverage that they deserve. I mean, Eklund, 23 points in 27 games at 22 years old. This guy is the future for Team Sweden, and not to get him involved here in the first kind of international play we've seen in a long time is super disrespectful. And I think this guy is going to have an extra chip on his shoulder. And I think next time we do see this Sweden team, he will be there. But Arvidsson beating a guy like Eklund out here is absolute blasphemy, in my opinion.
And I mean, you just took a look at his stats as well. I mean, impressive stats, especially for the team he's playing on. But at the same time, he's playing a lot of minutes. He's averaging 20 minutes of ice time a night. He's doing that at just 22 years old on a really bad team. Again, they've picked up their play a little bit. I will give them credit in that way. But it's not the greatest team, and he's putting together some really impressive numbers. So a guy like, Leo Carlson, Victor Arvidsson has not had a good season by any stretch, any metric. So to have him, I guess, on the team, maybe for that experience factor over a guy like Eklund, I don't think is the right choice. And I think we're seeing a lot of that throughout some of the teams and, some mock rosters that were released over the last couple of days, that maybe they're choosing some experience over skill. And I think that may come back to bite some of the teams in the butt, but we'll see. Eklund has been really good this season, but it's very interesting. I wanted to touch on the goaltending now as well. a little bit, as we touched on at the beginning. It is deep. I mean, Philip Gustafsson's having a great season. Jacob Markstrom looks revitalized now that he's in New Jersey and on a really, really good team. Not that the Flames are having a bad season by any stretch, but he's playing some meaningful hockey right now. And Linus Ullmark, of course, in Ottawa. What's your take on the goaltending? I mean, I think it's some of the deepest in this tournament. Again, there's only 4 teams, but it is a really good group.
I mean, it's 10 times better than Montembeau, isn't it? Like, when you look at this list and you compare it to the projected Canada lineup, I mean, this is probably one of the best, deepest goaltending. I'd say US has a good deep goaltending roster as well. But I mean, the Gus Bus has been on absolute fire for the Minnesota Wild. He is definitely going to go into this tournament as the #1 goalie. I can't see a world where this isn't the case. But then, you know, even if he does struggle, Linus Ullmark kind of having a little bit of a struggle year, I would say, in his new home. And now, you know, I think Jacob Markstrom, like you said, has had a good career resurgence this season. But there's no doubt in my mind that Gustafsson is probably one of the best goalies in the NHL to date and could be on the run for a Vezina campaign this year if he keeps up the way he's going. I mean, Minnesota's the hottest team in the NHL right now. They're first among the entire league. So if he can keep this up going into this tournament, it's going to be hard to score goals on this Sweden team.
It definitely is. And I think Ullmark, to me personally, it's more of a factor his season this is of the team that he's playing on right now than the player he actually is. I still think he's a really, really good goaltender and one of the best in the league. Another player to note as well, not making this team, is Rickard Rakell. Again, Pittsburgh is struggling. I'm not too, worried about this pick or this snub more than Eklund, I think, at this point, just because of the season he's been having. But I thought it was interesting to note as well. And we have some interesting quotes from some players that did make the team I want to get into as well. And that's Mika Zibanejad. He is struggling with the New York Rangers right now. And he just said that, seeing the reception that Team Sweden gets and how involved people get to follow it and cheer them on, and the support, it's a big thing. So he's excited to play. And I think one of the most underrated defenseman in the league, and Rasmus Andersson had some pretty good comments as well, that he finally gets to represent Sweden. And I think, again, he is a dark horse in this tournament. He is one of the most underrated defensemen in the entire league. They're adding some snarl to their defense as well with him. He plays physical. He can score. He's a great playmaker. He's one of the most underrated defensemen in the league. So before we wrap up, Casey, anything you want to say about, Rasmus Andersson or maybe Zibanejad? Because it's a weird mix of players here. There's a lot of players who are on struggling teams right now and struggling themselves. And then you have some stronger performers who are on the team too. So it's going to be an interesting dynamic going into the tournament.
Yeah, dude. I mean, one of my best friends is a Calgary Flames fan. He loves that team. He's always talking about Rasmus Andersson. So I've looked into the guy quite a bit just from him, and he's been an amazing defenseman. He can get it done on both sides of the ice. He can lean offensive if you need him to. He can stay back, play defensive. He's a great two-way defenseman, and I think he's really going to help this Sweden team out. I mean, their defense core is amazing. I mean, when you got a guy like Rasmus Dahlin there as well, I mean, he is unreal, and he just has that big booming shot. Anderson has that big booming shot. They have Erik Karlsson as well, who has another big booming shot. They're going to be raining shots on front of the net here, and this decor is very, very tight. When I've initially seen this decor and didn't see a guy like Hampus Lindholm there, it kind of like, I was kind of scratching my head a little bit, because he's just been a staple of that blue line for Sweden over the years, and it's a hard decor to crack. Obviously, you look at this list, having not having Hampus Lindholm there, you're not upset about it. You're just kind of surprised not to see him there. But back to Zibanejad, I think this guy is a phenomenal player, maybe one of the most underrated players in the NHL for a very, very long time. Yes, you may be having a little bit of a struggling season here, but guys like Zibanejad are just players. They go out there and they play, and once they kick it into gear, he is an absolutely phenomenal goal scorer, and there's no doubt in my mind he's going to pick it up at some point this season.
Yeah, and I think, some of the juice might go to his legs playing for his home country, like he mentioned as well. So it's going to be interesting. There's no affiliation to NHL teams when you come to this tournament, and everyone's playing for the pride of their country. So it's going to be very interesting to watch. But let us know in the comments what you think of Team Sweden's lineup and roster decisions as well, because there's some very interesting ones. Maybe not as much as other teams, but let us know in the comments what you think. And if you haven't yet, hit that subscribe button so you can stay up to date with everything in the NHL.